Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 98 of our Reddit series. This one's gonna be a bit more entitled Parents, and I know you're gonna love this one. 2 more episodes after this one, and we are at episode 100. You guys gave me some awesome suggestions last time, and I'm definitely looking at taking those on board. But for now, let's focus on this video, so leave a like, then sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. So I'm a lifeguard at my local pool, and this happened while I wasn't working. But I got a very detailed recount the next day from another traumatized lifeguard. So, I thought I'd share. A swimmer came up to one of the lifeguards, who we'll call Lifeguard 1, saying, I think there's been an accident in one of your toilets. Now, we aren't allowed to leave poolside while on duty, so he radioed for another lifeguard, who we'll call Lifeguard 2, to come and check it out, and oh my god. Someone had obviously had an awful case of diarrhea. The cubicle was covered in crap all up the walls, the floor, on the toilet paper dispenser, and in every crevice available. Lifeguard 2 quickly closes the toilet and ran for the manager because they had no idea how to even start cleaning this up. This is where the entitled parent comes in. Lifeguard 1 was watching the pool as he noticed a lady and her kid, who was maybe 6, walking on the poolside. The most important detail to note here is that the kid had crap dripping down his legs, and the conversation went as follows. The lifeguard says to the entitled mum, "Excuse me, your son can't come in the pool like that." And she just responds saying, "Oh no, don't worry, I just need to wash him off, then we'll be leaving." And the lifeguard's like, "What?" The entitled mum responds saying, "I'm just gonna dunk him in, just to get the worst off before he changes." And the lifeguard says, "No, you are not. You can use the showers for that." And the entitled mum comes back saying, "Oh, but this will be so much quicker, and we're here. Plus, the showers are gross," which, by the way, they are not. They get cleaned at least twice a day. And the lifeguard says, "The pool rules say that if you have diarrhea, you aren't allowed to swim, and have you got any idea just how unsanitary that is?" The entitled mum obviously doesn't care and says, "He'd only be in there for a few seconds. What's the big deal? My son isn't going to get anyone sick." At this point, they argued back and forth. All the while, the kid was dripping crap on the floor and looking like death. After a while, the manager had noticed what was happening and came over. The situation was explained, and the entitled mum tried to plead her case to him. She says, "So you see, I should be allowed to wash him here. It's communal water." The manager, in a voice that sounded like he was completely over stupid people today, says, "No, leave the pool or I will be forced to ban you." At this point, the lady finally got the message and left. I guess it just sounded more important coming from a grown man rather than a teenage lifeguard. However, in the end, it wasn't really a win for the lifeguards because they had to clean it all up. One of them threw up because the smell was that bad. And by the time she'd left, another toilet mysteriously had another crap on the floor. But whatever, they haven't come back yet. Well, I mean, starting off a video with probably one of the most disgusting stories we've ever had on the entire Reddit series is probably always a good way to start. I mean, what kind of... I actually don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. We've got probably one of the weirdest, most disgusting entitled mums that I've come across, but also it's kind of mild compared to some things. Like, sometimes I really just don't get these entitled parents, where their head's at and why they think that it's okay to do the things they can do, but you know what? Each to their own. This was recent, and I was heading home still wearing my cat ears and tail. I was aware that most normal people are weirded out by a grown woman wearing this, but I was super tired and had just finished helping a friend who is disabled and staying at a hotel near the convention. I was taking the bus home because I only came for a day. So, I decided at a stop to remove my ears and tail, which I should have done at my hotel, but my bad. I was aware of this small child and her mum. I put the ears and tail into my grab bag that my friend brought me, and I was sitting down to wait for the bus. Here comes the trouble no sooner as I sit down. The little child, who is a girl, reached her hand into my bag and says, "Mummy, it's soft." I look over and I politely close the bag. She wanders back to her mum, who asks me about the convention, which I answered yes, I just went to it. She then says, "Then you won't mind if my daughter tries on the ears and tail?" She seemed to think this is okay, but it was not. The ears and tails were made for adults, not kids. I politely said no, and the mother's friend walked up looking offended and said, "Why not? You're not wearing it, and besides, you're an adult. You should just give it to her." The mother of the child just looked at her friend. Now, the mother was no entitled mum at all. She accepted the answer and just asked me where she could buy the set. I happily gave the unentitled mum the webpage and warned her of the prices. Her friend, who was a total entitled mum, demanded that I just give my set to the child and says, "Look, we know you're just a freak. Just give it to my friend's daughter." She then prompts the unentitled mum to just take it from her because clearly you have a right to, and then the unentitled mum shut it down right then and there. She said to the entitled mum, she said no. And besides, red is not my daughter's colour. They have a pink one on the site and I'm gonna order that one for her when we get home. I also informed the unentitled mum that she can pick the size more suited to her child, which she then thanked me for. The entitled mum, on the other hand, was left to stew for a minute and then spouted, I hate Comic-Con freaks. They are all the same. A bunch of babies who clearly never grew up. I'm so glad that I will never let my kids be into that. I then whispered to the unentitled mum, I hope her kids do become nerds just to spite her. We had a good laugh as I waved to her daughter and said, I bet you'll be so cool as a pink kitty. You know, I feel like lately we haven't had a lot of these kind of stories where people are just trying to take other people's stuff for no reason. A lot of them have been a lot more in-depth, so it's nice to go back to our roots of the original, we'll call it, entitled parent stories where some stupid person just decides that somebody else's property belongs to them. I mean, in this case, it's probably a little bit worse. It wasn't even for them, it was for their friend's kid, and they for no reason decided to jump in and try and take somebody else's stuff. Like, I know I said this before, but I just don't get what runs through entitled parents' heads. So for a bit of backstory, my grandmother, on my mum's side, divorced when my mother and her two siblings were in high school. They both ended up remarrying happily a few years later. She had a fourth child with her new husband, which was a son. Unfortunately, her husband died in a car accident and she was left alone to raise her son, who was called Mark. My parents regularly helped with babysitting while she worked and supported her when she accidentally dropped a pot of boiling water on Mark and he had to get skin grafts on his back at age 5. She blew a lot of the life insurance money on things like belly dancing classes and things for her home. Mark grew up fine and moved out despite having an extremely controlling and overly attached mother. The main characters in our fantastical tale are going to be my mother, who we'll call Denise, my aunt, who we'll call Rachel, my uncle, who we'll call John, my half-uncle, who we'll call Mark, and the Wicked Witch, grandmother, or entitled parent. Almost 2 years ago, my Aunt Rachel is visiting from the UK to our quaintly screwed up home in South Africa. Rachel and John both live in the UK, by the way. It has been over a year since Aunt Rachel had spoken to her beloved little half-brother, Uncle Mark. A lot had happened to Uncle Mark since then, and he was now in a serious relationship and planning to propose. My Aunt Rachel was staying with us for the duration of her trip and brings up the idea of a family lunch. Thinking this is a splendid idea, my mother offered to drive and invited our dearest grandmother along. It wasn't a pleasant affair and not much of significance happened. Unfortunately, my grandmother has a habit of assuming that she knows the inner workings of people's lives, so not many answers came from Mark himself. Unsatisfied with not being able to discuss his desire to propose to his girlfriend, Aunt Rachel decided to plan another meeting with just Mark. My mother drove once again and joined them. Later that evening, after they'd returned home, my mother made the mistake of mentioning this to the Wicked Witch. The abyssal planes of hell beacon to the spirit of darkness within her. Firstly, she began insisting that Mark is her son and it was an utter betrayal and a plot to usurp her position in his life by not including and inviting her. She then contacted Uncle John and insisted that he cut contact with Denise and Rachel, to absolutely no avail. After which, she insisted that she would ensure that they never had contact with Mark again. She failed to, and according to her, saw that the world was against her and that those horrible children of hers had succeeded. Months went by and no contact was had. Myself and my brother were not even wished a happy birthday. Then came the letter. Each family member received a handwritten and stamped letter in the mail, and the contents of which left my mother and Aunt Rachel in tears. It was shaming, degrading, and spiteful contents. It read, I am willing to consider forgiving you if you will apologize. Uncle Mark didn't like this. The hero of a man stepped up and told her that he wasn't going to speak to her again if she didn't grow up, and he broke the news of his engagement. He told her that she would only be invited if she apologized, and he kept his word. She has not spoken to any members of the family since, and my mother, aunt and uncles plan to enjoy the wedding in peace. Honestly, it could just be me, and sorry for using a bit of hip lingo, but this just seems a little bit extra over something as petty as not being invited to a general family talk between siblings. I don't know. Like, this was super well written and I love that, but I just don't know how entitled this person really was. I mean, they just seem a little bit pissed off that they weren't invited. I mean, people do weird things all the time. Is it really that far-fetched for someone to try and break up a family over it? Who knows with entitled parents, because we've seen a lot worse. This happened somewhere in the middle of my first year at college. I was in the dining hall closest to my dorms for dinner, and I heard a lot of shouting and saw a bunch of people watching something. What I saw was a woman yelling at a guy with an embarrassed girl next to her. I assumed that the girl was the woman's daughter and that the guy might have been her boyfriend. I didn't really pay much attention to what the mum was saying and just thought that maybe she was angry because the girl was dating in secret or something like that. I was walking by with my plate of food and I heard the entitled mum scream, "My daughter should not even be near you. You'll just spread your autism to her." Now, usually, I don't care about other people's business. However, it always pisses me off when people are too ignorant to just look up info and assume stuff like cancer or HIV and AIDS are contagious through casual physical touch. I especially hate it when that stupidity leads to the suffering of others. I also have a bad habit of just exploding when I'm angry enough, and it did cause me to lash out a lot when I was younger. I also know that autism is a spectrum. Although there are common symptoms, it affects everybody differently. I don't believe that autistic people are stupid or rude, they just communicate and express themselves uniquely. I'm mentioning this because the wording of my insult to the entitled mum might make it seem like I have something against autistic people. I shouted at her, "Well, if she does have autism, she obviously got it from you since you have no idea how to be civil." That got everyone's attention, and that effing cow literally charged me. I sidestep her and I end up accidentally tripping her, although it was pretty satisfying. She fell flat on her face and this lady struggled to get up. I looked at the daughter, who was just shaking her head in embarrassment, and hurried away. Luckily, the dining hall was pretty big and there were a lot of other people, so I wasn't too worried about being found. I never found out what the aftermath was, but it wasn't my business anyway. I'm starting to notice a bit of a theme with this episode, whereas every single entitled parent just has some kind of weird ideas in their head that just simply don't translate to a normal functioning society. Like, lady, let's be real. Catching autism is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. There cannot possibly be a way that you genuinely believe that your daughter hanging out with somebody else that has autism is going to result in her getting autism as well. But hey, we've come across some pretty dumb entitled parents in the past and they've done much worse things, so what the hell do I know? Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just going to take a second to plug a couple of my social medias, including our Discord server. I do have a Twitter and an Instagram if you want to follow me on both of those. They are both at Bumfris, and feel free to send me a message and I'll do my best to respond. I also just want to take a second to say thank you so much for all the love lately, all of the comments, the likes, the subscribers, just the fact that you guys tune in and watch my videos every day. It really does make my day. Every single one of you is the backbone of this channel and I really cannot express how much I appreciate that. Without you guys, this channel would be nothing, and I love making these videos for you guys and I love the fact that you enjoy them. So on that note, I will wrap things up for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to take a second again to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.